It's a very slow boat to China. The number of bulk carriers delayed at Australian ports rose to 223 this week, the most on record. I'm here at the Newcastle coal port, about 2 hours north of Sydney. It's the biggest thermal coal export harbour in the world. And out there are about 50 ships anchored just off the coast, waiting to be allowed into port to load their cargo. But it's a very slow process. The infrastructure at the port is in desperate need of an upgrade, and it simply can't cope with all the traffic. And further north, at Gladstone and Hay ports in Queensland, the situation is even worse. Boats can be waiting for sometimes 3 months or even longer, waiting to come into port to load their ships. And this congestion at Australian ports is putting pressure on prices. Thermal coal prices peaked just before the US economic crisis went global in 2008. They've been making a comeback since, seen by the pink line thanks to twin global growth engines, China and India. Coking coal prices have risen even higher thanks to China's steelmakers.
And when you do the maths on a 50% increase in the coking coal price, you're looking at maybe $10 to $15 billion added to the value of coking coal exports. So a huge boost to Australia. But I think the reality is, as you say, that supply is not keeping up with demand. There's always going to be occasions where demand gets ahead of itself, and part of it's stockpiling in China, for example. But I think the broad picture there is still a very favourable one.
While Australia is profiting from sales of some of its natural assets, other resources are being put at risk. The government is investigating whether a Chinese coal ship was trying to take a shortcut through the Great Barrier Reef when it ran aground.
My view is the law must be fully and absolutely applied in these circumstances. Australians take the Great Barrier Reef very, very seriously, both now and for the future.
While some blame China, others say Australia hasn't upgraded its ports fast enough to keep up with supply and demand. At Newcastle, Heidi, Bloomberg News.